In a caustic but illuminating display of humble bragging, Mr. Evan Beard, a specialist in art investments for Bank of America, offers up a droll diagram of what he terms the four social classes of the art world. Penned after attending a high cultural soiree in a, quote, gentrifying section of Manhattan's Lower East Side, the op-ed was first published in a November 23, 2018 issue of the online platform Artsy. Artsy is for collectors. Artsy boasts that, quote, everything you'll ever need to collect art, you'll find on Artsy. From his perspective, Mr. Beard informs us that despite America's evasiveness about class distinctions, there is, quote, one subculture where the class hierarchy is on subtle display, end quote, and that is the ubiquitous art party. While scanning the room, Beard has an epiphany, telling us that, quote, I did not need a sociology degree to know who were the generals, the majors, and the lieutenants. And I'll just say here that this is obviously not from the party Beard attended recently. This is from 1968 in Ireland at a party with some rather recognizable figures in attendance. As if pouring French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu through a cocktail shaker, Beard's fourfold art world pecking order consists of the wealthy haute monde, the tastemakers, the intellectuals, and the art world functionaries. The latter category is where he locates himself. Beard's deceptive candor notwithstanding, the executive's observations betray far more than he may have anticipated, including a curious mix of reverence and disregard for actual living artists who do not even occupy any class position in his assessment. Mr. Beard naturally situates the wealthy haute monde at the top of the elite heap. Their interest in art, he tells us, is all about maintaining social rank in a world starved of such status. Further below them are the taste makers, including the leading art dealers and collectors primarily interested in assuring their own legacies, and I'm going to add their own investments. The group beneath tastemakers is populated by what Beard terms intellectuals. These are the curators and critics, perhaps even a rare academic or highly successful artist. Level 3's participation in the glitzy scene is focused on garnering respect from their betters by reaffirming the judgment of the tastemakers, who are, of course, at one level up. At which point we arrive at the lowest most bracket, the art world functionaries, consisting of lawyers, advisors, and the corporate financiers such as Beard, who are tasked with greasing the gears of the art market. Their bottom rung status, however, offers less of a guaranteed entry pass to these parties and soirees than a pay-to-play opportunity for wrangling potential customers. Curiously, Beard pictures himself and his fellow functionaries as a sort of gate-crashing plebeian gentry, if you can imagine the contradiction of that. This is how he puts it in the article. On my way to the bar, I became conscious of my functionary status, overdressed as I was, in my dry cleaning suit, neutral tie, and banker white shirt. I stuck out like a sore corporate thumb. I revealed my class identity, at least to myself, at check-in, where I scanned the RSVP list for prospects, so as not to miss a biz dev opportunity. My fellow functionaries and I will trade business cards, talk about the market, any market, and expense our cab. We are the art world's corporate infrastructure, banking, insurance, legal, and our marketing dollars, corporate grants, and sponsorships buy us a seat with the beau monde. As the art world's high proles, regardless of our income, we've never experienced the boredom of the old line rich or the class anxiety of the haute monde. But we're terrified of losing our jobs. So for us, an event like this will always be partly business. Cue the violins. But the question that immediately came to my mind, and probably yours as well, listening to Beard's complaints, is just where does our ignoble asset manager situate all those nameless and numberless artists not invited to this A-list party? What place do they have within his mirthful class configuration? After all, it is the labor of this dark matter multitude which generates the units of investment, that is to say, the artworks, upon which Beard and his fellow socializers depend. Indeed, in the banker's burlesque editorial, the only specimen from this species, the art producer, who receives any attention is a young artist, quote, fresh off a surprisingly high hammer price. And this unnamed partygoer, who Beard enigmatically describes as an elite, actually appears more as comic relief than as a proletarian cultural worker. As our cynical functionary Beard relays to us with conspicuous glee, this juvenile wunderkind overtly flaunts their disdain towards a member of the haute monde in a scene in which, now I'm quoting from Beard again, the scene is the artist, withdrawn and not hiding his boredom, threw off the hedge fund manager, making him feel square, or worse, bourgeois. Disinterested condescension is supposed to be his shtick. He's an unquestioned elite in a far-off realm called event-driven arbitrage. What? The artist as an interloping extraterrestrial from the land of event-driven arbitrage? What on earth does this even mean? According to the CFA Institute, a not-for-profit financial policy platform, and yes, another oxymoron, the definition of an event-driven arbitrage is an investment strategy that attempts to, quote, earn a return from the uncertainty that exists in the market in the time between an acquisition being announced and when the acquisition is actually realized. Is this then how capital perceives the contemporary artist? As the inhabitant of an infra-thin space between variable price discrepancies, like some quantum corpuscle, which might be a winning waveform, or might be a failing particle. And just another note here, infra-thin refers to Marcel Duchamp's idea, just difficult to describe, but basically you can think of it as two objects off an assembly line. What is the difference between those two objects that appear identical? Okay. While Beard sarcastically portrays his own social position as that of a knee-bending lowborn, squatting before his betters, as far as the rest of us are concerned, he is unquestionably a capitalist speculator, as well as a capitalist lackey. Furthermore, despite some overstated eye rolls, I don't know if you can use eye rolls in a piece that's printed, but you get my point, he clearly and fully identifies with his betters, which is why the omission of art makers as a class in this schema is not surprising. Not only did Beard devise his flippant flowchart far from the precarious working conditions of the working artist, but from his position near the top of the food chain looking down, it might even seem as if the fine art's unique clout grows out of the acuity of professional managers and investment influencers like himself, not unlike the proverbial farmer with the magical golden goose. And of course, I'm referring here to Marx's commentary. In summary, Beard's bombastic art world bestiary is both irksome, but also revealing, if inadvertently so. It surely informs us that when it comes to capital's appraisal of the artist, the formula is 1% devotion, and 99% dismissal, with one column of the ledger tabulating the cult power of a few successful artists, and on the other side, there is nothing to be inventoried whatsoever. For all of those artists who are not already auction house branded, that is to say, the majority, are absent. Their labors comprise just so much leaden matter, awaiting to be molded into treasure or not. Put differently, the bulk of artists exists far below Beard's fourth level of social stratification, in parts unknown, while all artists fit into no existing class phylum whatsoever. Therefore, even as Beard's four-part class taxonomy inadvertently reveals capital's blindness to the day-to-day reality of artistic labor, it also leaves unanswered fundamental questions about what the artist's actual class position is in contemporary society, and along with that, of course, the question of their reputation. For if most artists exist below even the lowest rung of the social ladder, according to Beard, then where exactly do they belong, if they belong? Part 2. Without factoring in this dark and far larger sphere of creative activity that furnishes the concrete material conditions for producing art, Mr. Beard's interpretations, as well as those of many other even more serious thinkers and writers, will always come up short. That is my contention and has been so for some time. And this is because any effort at recognizing who makes up the social categories of the art world must also include the many semi-failed artists I mentioned before, but also the non-professionals whose, quote, creative potential is never touched, to cite the art historian Carol Duncan. It also comprises, this dark sphere, dissident art activists and institutional dropouts. In short, the maintenance and reproduction of high art's entire mise-en-scène depends upon this motley and miscellaneous missing mass. And this weird state of exclusion, both exclusion and proximity, also prompts alternative means of survival for these artists, just as it should raise alternative critical methods for investigating such artistic dark matter. Categorically speaking, the art world's dark matter does not so much form a definite class or strata any more than it is homogeneous. Rather, if this missing mass generates any conceptual space at all or any conceptual representation, it would be closer to a lumpenography of and within the existing art world. That is to say, dark matter is a negative presence that is neither discretely mappable upon or coherent with the broader field of fine art. And yet, like the astronomical theory from which it derives its name, this missing creative mass anchors the smaller summit of high culture, which is indisputably hypervisible. That is, of course, artists who just came off a great auction house hammer price, etc. It is composed instead of the countless day-to-day art workers whose hope-filled aspirations and earnest belief in the idea of art remains relatively unsullied by the cynical world described by Beard. It is also the colossal aggregate agency of an artistic multitude who, being invisible in plain sight, are altogether omitted by Beard, and yet this immense pool of talent actively serves the art world in multiple essential ways. This includes indirectly, for Beard's exclusive partygoers, as well as the young artist who is fresh off the hammer price, and in ways that are both concrete and figurative. Here are just a few examples of this gravitational functioning. For example, this immense quantity of talent not only winds up as underpaid art educators, but it's also the art world's fabricators, installers, art movers, studio assistants, and interns. The utility props up the system in other ways as well, including through museum memberships, art supply purchases, trade magazine subscriptions, classes that are taken at local community colleges, and taught by other fairly dark matter artists. Importantly, we find this shadow multitude employed by art institutions, currently seeking to unionize themselves within major museums. This is a phenomenon that's largely in the United States, although there's a few other places in London and even the Vatican where the staff have been unionizing. And the point here is that so many people working in museums are actually MFAs or art historians and so forth. At the same time, this dusky realm constitutes the muted, non-reflective backdrop upon which the sparkling art glitterati gleam their brightest brights. But above all else, if there is anything that comes close to uniting this shadow multitude, it is a shared and stubborn faith in the redemptive power of authentic artistic expression, a faith that persists among art school graduates and unassuming amateurs alike. It follows them around on their day jobs, like a nagging, unconscious refrain whispering, "If only I did not have this stupid job, then I might become a truly great artist." Maybe some of you listening have had and heard this phantom murmur. I know I have. At the end of the day, Banker Beard's puckish observations about the nosebleed tip of the art world should not distract us from recognizing the potential agency of this 99.9% majority of unseen and unrecognized artists. And what remains unquestioned in these bouts of critique and contradiction is the determination of the field of art itself, including what forms of creative work lie outside its epistemic threshold, and how this dark matter not only sustains but potentially threatens the very system it makes possible. But, and here comes the digital age part of my talk, working along with my anthropic LLM AI assistant Claude, we have come up with what we call, for lack of a better term, dark matter inverse index fund, or an anti-market ETF, which is an exchange-traded fund. And it derives its particular value from its non-correlation with traditional art market metrics used by such market indices as Mimosas, ArtNet, and ArtPrice Global. Here are some of the art market asset funds that are available out there and the various indices. And let me just say that working with Claude, my collaborator, we came up with 3 specific ways this dark matter asset investment functions. 1, massive scale, given that the very large and inevitable volume of unknown artists who provide the index with its exceptional statistical stability. 2, a negative correlation benefit, insofar as it acts as a hedge against traditional art market volatility. And 3, the capacity to generate value from obscurity, since the price of the DMD appreciates with continued non-recognition. Furthermore, this DMD asset parallels Mr. Beard's comparison of the artist to an event-driven arbitrage because it exploits the gap between artistic production, value, and market recognition, which is basically the same way arbitrage profits from temporary price discrepancies. Put differently, this dark matter derivative is a financial instrument that bundles together the invisibility of unknown artists, thus speculating on their continued non-emergence rather than their discovery, which is to say, the more these constituent artists remain dark matter, the more valuable the aggregate asset becomes as a counter market instrument. Stay tuned for the launch of the DMD. Thank you.